Hello and welcome to the Health Show. My name is Sal DiBella and I'm your host. Today we have a very interesting person. His name is Dr. Robert Young. Dr. Young, he's a top researcher, scientist for over 2 decades. He is an author of many books. But one of the biggest books he has out now is The pH Miracle, where he sold 4.5 million copies. So, welcome, Dr. Young.
Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be on your program today.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Health Show. Now, can you, as we're starting, can you tell our viewers that are seeing you for the first time, what your credentials are?
Well, I remember somebody asked that question of Tony Robbins. I don't know if you know Tony Robbins,
Yes,
but
okay.
he said he had a PhD.
Okay.
And then he went on to say what the PhD stood for, and it said a PhD in results. You know that he didn't have any necessarily formal education, but the results he was getting. As far as my background, I've got 30 years in research. My background is in microbiology initially, but I went on to study chemistry as well as nutrition. So I have a PhD in nutrition. I have a doctorate in science with emphasis in microbiology, and I'm a licensed naturopathic doctor. So I went on, but that didn't necessarily qualify me for doing anything other than to begin my practice. And my interest has always been in studying the blood. For the last 30 years, I have been looking at live and dry blood, but I've also been studying it from a point of chemistry, studying not just the chemistry or the blood parameters, but also the interstitial fluids. And particularly, I'm known for the studies I've done in pH research, where we're studying the acid-base chemistry of the body. And I formulated 2 hypotheses. The first one is that the human body is alkaline in its design, in its perfect health. That's what I suggest that pH stands for, perfect health. But when we're pH balanced, and that's a acronym for the potential of hydrogen. When we're in an alkaline state, our body fluids are in an alkaline state, our cells are bathed in that alkalinity, then this is when we enjoy the greatest level of health and vitality. The second part of my hypothesis is that all functions of the human body produce acidic waste products that, if not properly eliminated, will cause sickness and disease. So disease is an expression of the body's inability to remove its own dietary metabolic waste products. And so that's the basis of my work. Over the last 30 years, I've probably seen over 1 million samples, looked at over 1 million samples of blood. I've had over 40,000 patients from over 191 different countries. But there's millions of people that follow me around the world. And of course, none of this was intentional. I was just like anyone else, just trying to find answers to my questions. And one of those questions, because I was raised in a family of tradition, and that tradition was the basic standard American diet of beef and potatoes and just foods that just weren't, over time, were not really good for us. And so I've developed, through my nutritional research, I've been able to understand what foods heal and what foods kill or have a negative impact on the most important organ of the body, and that's the blood. And I've taken this research, I've published it. I've got over 2,500 published articles. I've got my books, over 52 of them. The most popular are the pH Miracle series, and people are learning from this. And I'm just overwhelmed by it all and grateful for the opportunities to be able to to share this life-changing and life-saving information, this life-changing, life-saving research. In fact, I had Tony Robbins, I don't know if you know Tony, but I developed his health program, and I helped Tony with his own health. But when Tony found me, he was very curious about my basic philosophy, that it was an environmental approach, not an approach to specifically treating any specific disease. Looking at the body holistically, and a lot of people do that, but with the focus on the blood. And so studying the blood and looking at what foods impact the blood in a positive and a negative way, even the immune system, this is what has then been what I've been writing about for over 3 decades.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps you to understand what I've been up to.
Yes, I think that's very informative. Now, before we start, can you comment on what was in the news recently, a few weeks ago, about Angelina Jolie removing her breast, her ovaries, and fallopian tubes, not to get cancer? Can you comment on that?
Well, I'm a proponent of prevention, but prevention in a natural way. I mean, I don't think any man would remove their testicles to prevent testicular cancer. Just as no one's going out because there's a risk within their family for heart disease, removing your heart. You know, common sense plays in this particular situation where it really doesn't make a lot of intellectual sense. And when we look at genetics, this is what I've said. I've said that 95% of all sickness and disease is caused by what we eat, what we drink, and what we think. 5% of all sickness and disease is caused by genetics, which is triggered by what we eat, what we drink, and what we think, which really then comes to the conclusion of all this, that 100% of what we eat and drink and think affects our overall health and well-being. So we're in complete control. One of my patients was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, and she was also diagnosed with genetic markers. And these genetic markers, as she went on a non-invasive alkaline approach to her condition, her tumor shrank and disappeared. Her inflammatory ducts also normalized. And the genetic markers, the BRCA gene 1 or 2, were no longer to be expressing. Because the thing about cells have receptors and acceptors. And they're all triggered by their environment. So my approach to dealing with any disease is to change the environment, which then either turns on or off these receptors and acceptors. Because the acceptors communicate with the genetic intelligence of the cell, and the receptors are sensitive to their environment. So if there's a particular genetic expression, that genetic expression can alter if you change the environment. So my approach is all about the environment, that the environment or the milieu or the terrain is everything. The germ or the disease is nothing more than an expression of the environment in which those cells find themselves. It's a very simple, I can explain it in a metaphor. It begins with a question. The question is this: what would you do if you had a fish tank and the fish were sick in that tank? Would you treat the fish, or would you clean up the water or change the water?
Change the water.
Okay. So if you ask that same question to your medical doctor, or even to your naturopathic doctor, your holistic doctor, you see, the focus needs to be taken away from the cancerous condition, because that's a symptom of the environment. We can either treat the disease, or we can change the environment, which is then expressing that particular symptomology. So I believe the treatment of disease is found not in the cell, but what's happening around the cell. and I've said this particularly about cancer in my book, cancer is not a noun, it's an adjective. It's what's happening to the cell. So you don't have cancer cells, you have cancerous cells that are actually transforming to their environment. Now, just recently, Stanford University was taking cancer cells and transforming those into immune cells. One cell, which was theoretically deadly, to now a helper cell that was going to help the environment and heal the condition. This is called pleomorphism. They call it cellular transformation. The last 30 years, I've been validating and documenting that cells have the ability to change their form and shape to become different cells depending on the environment. So when we understand this principle, it's a universal principle of physics, that there's only one thing in life that is constant, and that is change. Cells, genetics, are all subject to change depending on the environment that we find those cells in. One last metaphor. What happens in New York when the weather gets cold? What do? What changes do you make to maintain your body temperature?
You dress up and put a heavy jacket.
And what happens when the sun comes out in the spring and the summer? What do?
You take it off.
You adapt to the environment.
Yes.
That's all cells do. They either put on a coat or they take off a coat. And the symptoms that medical science has caused disease is a scientific illusion. There is no disease. There are conditions of imbalances that are reflections of the environment, which is completely controlled by what? What you eat, what you drink, and what you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Now, just getting on another subject, you have a ranch that you have patients coming to, and you've been helping people for, you say, 40,000 people for many years. And now with your book, The pH Miracle, you've been out there, and a lot of people know about you. So because of that, I think, you've been arrested for a few things that they claim you did, which you didn't. So can you explain a little bit about what happened and what's going on at this time?
Well, my basic philosophy is, and what's happening here in the United States is, we are a nation of laws, and the rule of law does rule, but we're compounding laws upon laws upon laws that are literally suffocating and taking away our freedom of choice. I mean, we look at something as simple as Obamacare. That is a wonderful idea, but it's taken out all of our choices. You cannot choose the doctor. You cannot choose a naturopathic doctor and have that covered. You can't you can't elect for a non-invasive, non-chemical treatment for your cancer. The only thing that's covered is chemotherapy, radiation. Here at the ranch, we practice a natural hygiene approach, environmental approach to all sickness and disease, recognizing that disease is an expression of an imbalance in the fluids of the body, which is controlled at a delicate pH of 7.365 to 7.4. What's not being measured anywhere in the world, but here at the ranch, is the chemistry of the interstitial fluids. Now, what are the interstitial fluids? The interstitial fluids are the fluids that surround the cells, and the intracellular fluids are those fluids inside the cell. What's being tested by current medicine are the fluids outside the cells in the blood. So you could have a high or normal sodium level or abnormal potassium or high potassium, but that's not a reflection of what's happening where the real show is taking place. It's in their interstitial fluids. So these tests are being done by our astronauts before they go into space. The pH of the tissues is being determined, and we've been doing this now for 30 years. And we learned that you can have high potassium or low potassium depending on whether you're in metabolic alkalosis or metabolic acidosis. So because of our high success, which is over 94% in all conditions, we become subject to, let's say, investigations because we're not following normal protocols. We're allowing people to heal themselves, to make their own health choices. Those folks which are interested in a non-invasive, non-radioactive, non-surgical approach to their particular condition. In other words, real health care, not sick care. Not medications, but empowering people with education. So in 2013, we were raided by over 47 armed guards with AK-47s, and we were quarantined. My whole office, I have 68 employees, were quarantined, and they were actually told that they should leave their employment, that they were taking this company down. You see, that's what the real intention was here. My arrest was not about the legalities of what we are doing. My arrest was a result of success, of doing things naturally rather than chemically, approaching science. And of course, the government has this philosophy, and of course, Dr. Berinsky talks about it within his own video because he was persecuted, not prosecuted, but persecuted, like myself, for up to 20 years. I've been arrested 3 times, acquitted, and all of my charges of grand theft and conspiracy have been dropped. I'm dealing with 1 count, practicing medicine without a license. And what does that really mean? My medical doctor, Dr. Ben Johnson, you probably know from his book, his books that are out on the market, also The Secret, he was in. He talked about that. I had 2 of my patients were in that that movie about their healing of their cancers. In fact, all the cancers that were talked about in The Secret were patients of mine. And Dr. Ben Johnson, who wrote the book The Healing Code, was my medical director, and we've worked together for years. He's a licensed medical doctor. So how do you arrest someone who's licensed to practice medicine in the state of California? You do it to embarrass, to suppress, to put people out of business, or to stop them doing something that maybe someone else doesn't like. The question is, who is that someone else? Who are the people behind the scenes that are doing this across the country using an anti-terrorist law called Operation Choke to put people out of business by closing their bank accounts? And yes, this is exactly what happened to us. It wasn't about the efficacy of my protocols, whether they worked or didn't work. It was all about following traditional or conventional medical protocol. You know, 6 months later, I was arrested while exercising with a group of patients on rebounders. I mean, our program here is about the environment. It's about changing that with what we eat, what we drink, and how we think. And the protocols are all non-invasive, non-radioactive, and non-medical. And yet, this is part of the protocol of, you know, putting someone or arresting someone like myself to embarrass them and to break them so they stop doing what they're doing, or people say, wow, you know, what is going on there, really? Well, we've invited the press to come out. We've invited the district attorney to come out. We've invited any authority, any investigator reporter to come out. You know what their answers have always been? Well, no, you know, this is not the way we work. So I continue to do what I can do because it works. It helps people. I continue to fight for freedom and the rights to choose your own doctor, choose your own health care, choose your particular path, whatever it might be, alternative, complementary, integrated, traditional, conventional, holistic, whatever name you attach to it, but to have that right, that freedom to choose your, health of the body, because it is your body, it is your life, and it should be your choice. And I strongly believe that. And it hasn't dissuaded me or stopped me from continuing to help people around the world.
That's great. That's great. I'm glad to hear you're still taking in patients. You had mentioned something that you have a 94% cure rate. Now, is that after people having chemotherapy and radiation coming to you, or is that without treatment?
If we take 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people, they will have a varying result and of success. But what we have found is those that, I call it the 3 T's, those who have the right thinking, so thinking, those who have enough time to detox and heal their bodies appropriately, and we then, through quantitative, non-invasive techniques, through thermography, through ultrasound, where we look at anatomy, through 3D biofunctionality testing, where we do the interstitial pHs and the chemistries, rather than just blood chemistries, we're doing interstitial chemistries, interstitial antioxidants, interstitial pH. When we have all this information, we put it together, and then we track this, because if you can't measure it, how do you know your success? And we have to be able to measure these things qualitatively and quantitatively. So we use both non-conventional and conventional techniques to quantify all this, to prove out our results. Now, number one, we don't cure anybody. I want to make that perfectly clear. And number two, we don't treat anybody. Our protocol is a self-care to a self-cure program. People have to do this themselves because it's their body. We assist them, we educate them, we help them through this process. We teach them the right forms of exercise. We teach them the alkalizing compounds that will help hyperperfuse the tissues with alkalinity. We teach them how to properly detox the body of dietary, metabolic, and respiratory acidosis. We teach them how to build blood, how to build healthy blood. And we measure that, quantify that through doing hemoglobin and hematocrit testing. And all this is done legally. The results are astounding. They're actually 3 times more than what Dr. Berinsky's experiencing.
Well, Dr. Brzezinski, I asked him that same question. And he said to me that he's got like anywhere, I believe he said, I asked almost all doctors. He said he has if someone went to his office and didn't have chemotherapy and radiation, he's got around a 60 to 80% cure rate. Now, if they've had chemotherapy and radiation and surgery, then it's maybe a 40% rate of remission. If they came in with something else like heart disease, diabetes, or breathing problems, that could be even less than the 40%. So basically, that's what he said.
I want everybody to know that I love Dr. Berinsky. I want everyone to know that I admire him and his stick-to-itiveness and his desire to find a cure for cancer and helping so many people. The reason why I'm so touched by all this is because my daughter was diagnosed with an astrocytoma. She was diagnosed with brain cancer in her 3rd trimester with our first grandchild, her first child. And she was told that they needed to do immediate surgery. She was told that they needed to do an immediate C-section. Now, had she not had the upbringing in our family of a holistic, natural approach, I believe she would not be here today. It's now been over 12 years. No chemotherapy, no surgery, no radiation. She was told she would never have children again. This would be her only child. She's had 3 children. And the bottom line is she's in 100% remission and has been for over a decade because she chose to follow the environmental approach rather than treat a specific condition, which I see as the body trying to heal itself. Tumors are nothing more than scabs of the body trying to heal itself. Why would we want to pick at it? Why would we want to biopsy when the body's trying to encapsulate and heal that tissue which has been damaged by an acidic environment? You see, cancer is not a disease of the tissues or organs. It's a disease of the fluids of the body. Cancer is a liquid, not a cell. Cancer is lactic acid, it's uric acid, it's sulfuric acid, it's phosphoric acid. It's the acids that come from cellular breakdown, from metabolism. It is even citric acid. These are the waste products of metabolism. These are the waste products of metabolism, if not properly eliminated, are distributed out into the connective tissues and then into the fatty tissues. This is why women are at high risk for breast cancer, not because of genetics, it's because of poor elimination. If you cannot remove your own waste products, those waste products will be pushed into the fatty tissues, i.e. for a woman, the breast, will cause inflammatory ducts, lead to tissue breakdown, tumor formations, which are damaged cells or scabs. The current medical science calls inflammatory ductal cell carcinoma. So what is our success with inflammatory ductal cell carcinoma breast cancers? It's 100%. Not because we treat the condition, but in Europe, they recognize that inflammatory ductal cell carcinoma is nothing more than an inflammation, and they treat the inflammation and reverse the condition. We treat it as a cancer, and the only protocol for that is surgery. So when we come back to those who have done elective mastectomies based on genetics, this makes no sense to me. Why would you want to do this when your genetics is under your control based upon how you control the environment? If you have a saltwater aquarium, if you have a swimming pool, you know if you don't measure the pH, if you don't control the pH, if you don't keep the waters pristine, that the pH is going to drop, that algae and bacteria and molds are going to appear, and you know this. So it takes daily care of those waters. How are we taking care of our internal fluids of our body? You see, they're out of sight, so they're out of mind. We don't perceive the importance of regulating the internal fluids of the body, and it can be simply done by using litmus paper, testing the urine, which is a measurement of interstitial pH, or the saliva, which is a measurement of your reserves of alkalinity to buffer metabolic, respiratory, dietary, or environmental acids. You see, these are inexpensive ways to manage the internal environment. And then if you want more quantitative information, you know, you finally have someone that understands this issue of tissue or metabolic acidosis. And keep in mind, metabolic acidosis or interstitial acidosis or alkalosis is not taught in any medical school in the world. Mm-hmm. Why? We accept decompensated acidosis when the pH of the blood plasma falls from 7.365 to 7.3 to 7.2, And what do they receive? They receive an alkalizing dose of sodium bicarbonate. We recognize compensated acidosis, where the body is taking alkaline minerals from the bones, like calcium or magnesium from the muscles, and we end up in hypercalcemia because the body's trying to maintain the alkalinity of the blood. We don't understand simple things as what causes indigestion, what causes an upset stomach. There is no pathology on this as well, but it's very simple if you understand the biochemistry. The stomach's purpose is to alkalize the blood and tissues in our food. And when you eat something, or when you think something negative, or when you're exercising, the stomach produces sodium bicarbonate to pull into the blood and tissues to maintain that alkalinity. Or it uses alkalinity to neutralize the acids of the food. That's the main purpose of the stomach. We, as a society and as scientists and as practitioners, don't understand something as simple as what causes morning sickness or a tummy ache. And it's nothing more than the body trying to restore its alkalinity in the blood and tissues. And you end up with a belly full of hydrochloric acid because you cannot produce sodium bicarbonate in isolation. For every molecule of sodium bicarbonate, you produce an equal amount of hydrochloric acid. This is what causes the number one, maybe number two health condition in the world. It's called acid indigestion. It's called acid reflux. What causes it? The body's need for more alkalinity. It is so simple. It is so logical.
You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. Just last night, when I eat something maybe that I ate too much or whatever, and I have an upset stomach, I take a level teaspoon of baking soda, sodium bicarbonate,
right,
and I drink that, and boom, within, I'd say a minute, it's gone.
It's gone because it neutralizes the hydrochloric acid, because the stomach, listen to me carefully, the stomach does not digest food. If you swallow a leaf of lettuce, if you swallow a peanut, if you swallow a piece of corn, if you swallow a legume, whatever you swallow is going to come out the same way it went down. Mm-hmm. It comes out. You'll see the corn, you'll see the peanut, you'll see the almond, you'll see the leafy lettuce come out, because there is no digestion in the human body. Mm-hmm. We only have one instrument in the human body that digests food.
Okay. Now,
and what's that? It's the teeth. And if you don't have any teeth, you better get a blender, because that's the first thing we do with any of our patients. We put them on blended foods, because we know that if they're sick, they're deficient in alkalinity, and they can't, they don't have the energy to chew the food properly, and they've got congestion and backup of acidity that's causing a sickness and disease. That's all sickness and disease is the backup of metabolic and dietary wastes which have not been properly eliminated.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what it is, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, these are just levels of acidosis.
Now, can you tell our viewers what steps they should take to get rid of cancer or other diseases with the pH?
Well, you can't get rid of any disease until you open up the channels of elimination. And there's 4 of them. You've got to be eliminating your bowels 4 to 6 times a day. You've got to be urinating 5 to 10 times a day. You've got to have pores open so it eliminates toxins through the pores of the skin. You've got to be breathing deeply and eliminating carbon dioxide or other gases, acidic gases, out through respiration. So you have to open up respiration, defecation, urination, and perspiration. You do that through exercise. You do that through salt baths. You do that through lymphatic massage. You do that through alkalizing colon hydrotherapy and hydration by drinking 4 to 6 liters of alkaline fluids a day, by taking alkaline salts of sodium and potassium bicarbonate. It's very simple, and it works.
Right. Okay. So when someone comes to see you for the first time, you know, what do you tell them? I know you just explained that, but what do you explain to them what their diet should be, how high their pH should be to get rid of cancer or any other disease?
Well, cancer is stage 7 acidosis. There's 7 stages. So the first stage is enervation. I'm tired, I just don't seem to have any energy. That's stage 1 acidosis. That means the body's starting to back up and hold its own waste products. Stage 2 is sensitivities. Stage 3, like, just a soreness here, a little sore there. Irritations and allergies is stage 3. Stage 4 is inflammation. Now, we have to connect the dots because medical science is now connected the dots. You cannot be sick or tired, or you cannot have a serious health challenge without inflammation. Inflammation always precedes heart disease. Inflammation always precedes cancer. Inflammation always precedes diabetes. Okay, inflammation is stage 4 acidosis. Stage 5 is induration. What is induration? Induration is the solidification or the cross-linking of fibrin monomers to create clots or tumors. Induration are stones, like calcifications in the gallbladder. How would we even know that? We have to test for it. Calcifications in the breast, calcifications in the brain. I see calcifications or acidification or solidification of acids from lactic acid to sulfuric acid to uric acid, all these different acids, to even glucose or citric acid. They solidify and they build up on the walls. This induration leads to arteriosclerosis. The 6th stage is ulceration. 7th stage is degeneration. So when someone comes to the ranch, not for treatment, but for education and coaching, because this is a self-care, non-medical, non-invasive program, they generally come with a diagnosis. Now, we do have a team of medical doctors who they see first to go through physiological, functional, and anatomical testing. That includes the 3D bioscan, it includes thermography, it includes ultrasound, it includes chemistries of the interstitial pH of the blood and also the fluids around the cell. So we know whether a person's in metabolic acidosis, whether they're in metabolic alkalosis. If someone's in interstitial metabolic alkalosis, we know that they are in the prevention mode. If they're in metabolic acidosis, that we know that they're in stage 7 acidosis. So we look at diseases that are classified by current medicine as symptoms of acidosis and 7 different stages of that acidosis. So when we're working with people, number 1, we teach them how to open up the channels of elimination. Very critical. You've got to be able to circulate and eliminate whatever you're ingesting. The second thing we teach them is how to hyperperfuse their tissues with alkalinity, because all sickness and disease begins in the interstitial fluids, not in the blood, in the interstitial fluids. The blood always tries to maintain its delicate pH. The interstitial fluids is what's varying, okay? And we teach them how to hyperperfuse the tissues with alkalinity by using the hemorrhoidal veins, by doing colon hydrotherapy and infusing alkalinity with an uptake, which is the best uptake system of the body, where it uptakes that into the blood and then pushes that alkalinity out into the tissues where the acidity is that's causing the dis-ease condition. So we teach them how to hyperperfuse through what they eat. And what they eat, all foods have to be either juiced or liquefied. We're in a healing place. The reason why is because it takes too much energy, and that expends energy that needs to be used on healing. So all of the foods that are ingested, there's several rules. Number 1, it has to be either liquefied, or 2, pureed or juice. And number 2, it needs to be alkalizing, and it needs to be green. The reason why we go to a plant-based, high chlorophyll content diet, I say live it, is because this is the way we start healing the gut, because that's one of the processes. Healing the gut building the blood. So everything starts from the core outward. If we can't heal the core, then we can't heal the heart, we can't heal the liver, we can't heal any of these other organs that are being broken down by metabolic and dietary waste. Once we heal the core, realizing that all food that goes into the small intestine and then goes into the crypts of the intestinal villi needs to, 1, be liquid, and number 2, needs to be green, and number 3, needs to be at a pH of 8.4. When we push the pH up in what we eat and what we drink, when we neutralize the acids of the stomach as it's trying to produce alkalinity and support that by, like what you did when you had an upset stomach from eating the wrong foods, by taking several teaspoons of sodium and potassium bicarbonate to neutralize hydrochloric acid, to alkalize the food and prepare that food for biological stem cell production in the crypts of the small intestine. This is where embryonic cells are made. Not in the marrow, not in the liver, but in the gut. Okay, this is where it's all done. It's not just my research, it's also the research of others.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would say Google this, stem cell production in the crypts of the small intestine. This was a discovery I made 2 decades ago, which science has now caught up with me in 2011, validating that primary stem embryonic cells are made in the crypts of the small intestine. Now Stanford is saying that cells can transform, so these new stem cells become erythroblasts that become erythrocytes. And you know something which very few people know? Is the red blood cell is the primary cell. It is blood that becomes muscle. It is blood that becomes bone. It is blood that becomes your new liver, your heart, your spleen. It is blood. The quality of that blood is life itself. This is a living, flowing organ, which I've been studying for over 30 years. And realize, and particularly the research of the Russians who are transforming, biologically transforming blood into skin cells. You can transform any blood cell into an additional cell, into another cell, into a muscle cell. When you cut your skin, it's the blood that becomes the scab that becomes the new skin. Whether it happens externally or internally, it is the blood that heals. And the quality and the quantity of that blood is critical. So we measure that, we follow it. We teach people how to build their blood naturally with what they eat and what they drink. Not with drugs, not by what Lance Armstrong was doing, blood doping. We teach people, even the athletes I work with, professional and amateur athletes around the world that I work with, I teach them how to increase their hemoglobin and their blood counts beyond what normal is in order to carry more oxygen and heal faster. Whether you're running a marathon, or you're in a bake ride, or you're on a basketball court in a world championship. Those athletes that understand these principles realize that life is blood, and blood is made in the crypts of the small intestine by what we eat and what we drink. So we are very, very strict on the food. In fact, I call it the COWS program. COWS stands for chlorophyll, oil, water, and salt. It's the 4 food groups. Salt is necessary to produce sodium bicarbonate. Salt is what our fluids are made out of. I mean, we are bathed in a saline solution. A salt-free diet is a diet that's going to create problems for you, health challenges, and really take away the quality and quantity of your life.
What is the best salt? Dr. Kohler was saying pink salt. Never heard of pink salt.
The best salt is a liquid salt.
A liquid salt?
The best salt is a salt that's in suspension, just like our own body fluids. The only way you can tell a good salt is take that salt, put it in water, stir it up, let it sit for 24 hours, and if it stays in solution without particulates falling out, that's a good salt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you mentioned 8.4 to keep the pH to up to 8.4. How easy is that? I mean, it doesn't seem easy to keep...
You'd be amazed at how easy it is when you take the acidic factors out of your life. when you take out the beef, the chicken, the pork, the fish, when you take out all the sugary foods, when you take out the high sugar fruits, the apples, the oranges, the pears, and the bananas, when you start putting in the alkalizing foods like the avocado, the cucumber, the broccoli, the spinach, the celery, when you start taking nuts out of the diet and start juicing those nuts like almonds and hazelnuts and making hazelnut milk and almond milk, because it's all pre-digested, the body can use the fats. When you start taking liberal amounts of good oils from hemp, from black seed, from flax seed, from chia seed, you can't eat the seeds. The seeds will come out of you just like they go in.
Mm-hmm.
You have to juice everything. You have to puree everything. This is the secret to changing the environment, increasing in circulation and elimination, and start building healthy blood that then restores all of the body's cells, tissues, and organs.
Now, have you dealt with anyone that had emphysema?
That's not a condition that I've worked with a lot. 90% of our cases are cancerous conditions, but we work with metabolic disorders such as type 1 and type 2 diabetes. We work with multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS, neurological conditions, dementia. Great success with autism. Unbelievable success with prostate cancers and breast cancers. But we have reversals on esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, bowel cancer. Great success with leukemias because we realize that leukemia needs to be supported with an alkaline lifestyle and diet. Emphysema or even pancreatic cancers, which are caused by either drinking alcohol or smoking tobacco. When we eliminate these acidic factors, when we're dealing with lung congestion, and we start opening up respiration and healing the lungs, not by treating the lungs, but by changing the environment, saturating the lungs with alkalinity, then you can get, with then new blood flowing to the lungs, you get regeneration of new lung cells, and this condition can be reversed the way any other condition can be reversed, whether it's arthritis, osteoarthritis, osteoporosis. These can all be regenerated by focusing not on the bones, not on the condition or the emphysema, as you brought up, but on the environment of which those lungs are then living in. Change the water, hyperperfuse the tissues with alkalinity, heal the gut, because if you don't heal the gut, you can't heal the blood. And if you can't heal the blood, you can't heal the body. I call it the 3 Bs: bowel, blood, body.
Mm-hmm. In my research with emphysema, because I have someone that's close to me that has that, I came across a few doctors from Washington University, and they cured emphysema in animals with high doses of vitamin A. And what happened was I tried to get in touch with them. I said, I'd love to have them on my show to tell me exactly what they did, to cure this emphysema, because supposedly it's an incurable disease. And finally, one of the doctors called me back, and she said to me, I'm sorry, Mr. DiBella, but I cannot talk about it. I can't come on your show, and that's it. I apologize, but I can't talk about it. So, but what she did in her research is she found that high doses of vitamin A reversed the emphysema in rats. So the person in my family started taking I had Dr. Levy on my show, and he's a believer in intravenous vitamin C or liposol encapsulated vitamin C and glutathione, same thing. And they've been taking that, and they've been taking vitamin A, beta carotene, and the glutathione and a number of other supplements. And, you know, I don't know for sure because we didn't do testing, but so far I think there's no change. I think it's getting better somewhat, you know.
Well, you won't know unless you measure it.
Right.
And the only way you can measure it is to quantify that through through physiology, through anatomy testing, and through functionality testing. But what I also do, which is very unique, and I've been doing this, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bullen test, but the Bullen test was just published. Again, it was originally published in 1952 in the New England Journal of Medicine. It was republished in an association that I belong to, which is the American Association of Cancer Researchers. It was published in June of 2014. And the Bullen test is a non-invasive test to be able to look at the blood and how it coagulates, and based on its coagulation gives us information markers of where inflammation is in the body. It quantifies specific locations of inflammatory or malignancies without doing an MRI or a CAT scan. I'm not saying you can't do those, but if you want to avoid those, looking at dried coagulated blood and understanding these patterns, much like looking at snowflakes, gives information, much like looking at, let's say, how old a tree is by its rings. You can tell in one drop of blood what's going on in the human body, which according to several other scientists at MIT looking at this, say, you know, this is Nobel work. Bottom line is, our work has to be measurable, and we do measure. And we measure by using both conventional and traditional and non-traditional testing in order to verify the progress of the client, not just empirically, you know, by asking questions, which is good, you know, how do you feel, but literally looking at the blood, seeing if the blood is repairing itself, looking at the organs anatomically using ultrasound, and then looking at and doing inflammatory tests, functionality tests, to see if the markers are changing. Now, glutathione is a wonderful antioxidant. It's actually better taken rectally than it is through IV, because glutathione, being an antioxidant, is not common in the bloodstream per se, and it stresses out the blood. So we do not do any IVs here at the ranch. And once again, we do not cure any disease. This is a self-help, self-care program. We teach people how to do this, how to help themselves. And in doing so, using glutathione, using N-acetylcysteine, using resveratrol, using lycopene, using lutein, using, you know, vitamin A, not vitamin C. Vitamin C is an acid. It has a different function in the body. It breaks things down. It's an oxidant. We're talking about antioxidants. Vitamin C is not an antioxidant. Vitamin A is an antioxidant. Okay? So when you're building up your antioxidants, what are you doing? You're building up those elements that the body needs to buffer metabolic and dietary acids. So you're reducing your acid load. When you reduce the acid load, then you reduce the symptomologies that are associated with the real cause of all sickness and disease. And that's increased acidosis, which is measurable. Mm-hmm. We don't make this stuff up. We measure it. Mm-hmm. And so when you have this information, and I even hate to say this, but we're the only lab, we're the only clinic in the world that is actually doing these non-invasive, non-chemical tests that gives us information, you know, by licensed people to do this. So, because we need the information, because we need to measure the results.
Can you share with our viewers some success stories that you've had through the years?
Well, I just shared with you my daughter's success.
Okay.
With her brain cancer.
Okay.
You know, just recently, over a 2-year documented study by University of Southern California top docs in urology. This is the situation. One of our clients began the program with 3 tumors in the prostate, an enlarged prostate. So we're dealing with prostatitis with prostate cancer. Medically documented with a Gleason score of 7 and a PSA of 19.2. 3 months after being on the program, tumors shrinking. One disappeared. Prostate shrinking. Okay? He did another biopsy, 15 core samples. Why? Because he wanted to document the cure for prostate cancer. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
After 3 months, the doc said, well, things are progressing. This is very interesting. And we're talking about a lifestyle program. We're not talking about medical treatment here. We're talking about using food, what we drink, what we think, how we exercise, how we open up the channels of elimination, how we perspire, and how we manage and maintain the alkaline design of the body. Okay? After a year, he did another biopsy. And just recently, when I say recently, in November, went through a 4th biopsy, taking 15 core samples of the prostate. The prostate now measures the size of a teenager. The prostate has no cancerous tumors at all within the prostate. This is all medically documented, using MRI, and taking tissue samples, so all samples have been biopsied. No cancer anywhere, tumors all gone. Using ultrasound to verify this. Now, on top of this, when he was a young man, he was diagnosed with hepatitis C, and he was also diagnosed with cytomegalovirus. These are things that are generally and are told by our medical community are non-treatable, uncurable. Guess what? They tested him for hep C, no hep C titers, all gone. They tested him for cytomegalovirus, no titers of CMV, all gone. His arteriosclerotic plaque, all gone. We're talking about a cure, a self-cure protocol for prostate cancer, for hepatitis C, for cytomegalovirus, and for arteriosclerosis, all medically documented with MRIs, with ultrasound, with thermography, with live and dry blood testing, with chemistries of the blood. The PSA went from 19.2 down to 2 point something. This guy now has a sex life. He still has his prostate. He feels youthful. He feels energetic. He just turned 50 years of age. I think 50. Yeah, 50. He's doing wonderful. And his doctor at USC said, this is a miracle. And I know this gentleman, and I know his team, and they're one of the top docs doing, surgeries of prostates. Out of his own mouth said, we need to do more. We need to give patients a choice. Chemotherapy, radiation or surgery, or lifestyle and dietary change. Mm-hmm. We have had 100% success using this protocol with people who have been diagnosed with prostatitis or prostate cancer. We have not had one not go into remission. This is the result when you change the environment rather than treat the condition. This is why our numbers are so high, because we're not treating cancer. We're not using medicines. We're teaching people how to restore the alkaline design of their body and open up the channels of elimination to remove the environmental, respiratory, dietary, and metabolic acids that are produced every second of one's life.
Can we talk a little bit now about I know we're going to run over a little on the show, but I think what you're saying, people have to know, and it's important. That's why we'll continue and go a little further. About supplements. What supplements? I'm a big fan of turmeric. I tell everybody, almost everybody in my family takes turmeric. I'm a big fan of that. I take it every day.
Yeah, I love the spices. I love turmeric. I love cayenne. I love things that will increase circulation. These are things that I love. Hemp seed that's high in CBD, which is an antioxidant. I love resveratrol. These are things that I've found successful at the anatomical level, at the cellular level, that affect the quality of the blood, that affect in a positive way our environment. It will not pull the pH down. I like minerals. I love chlorophyll. If you want to raise your if you want to raise your blood hemoglobin and your blood counts, all you have to do is start drinking non-glycerin, pure magnesium or copper chlorophyllin, and you can raise the hemoglobin and blood counts without any medications. Happens naturally. When you start increasing the oils from hemp to flax to black seed to borage, these are oils that help to build, that can flex and build the membranes of stem cells.
Now, what about CoQ10, vitamin D3, iodine, all the things that people are lacking?
Potassium iodide, and potassium iodide is essential for the normal function of the thyroid. And anatomically, we are finding cysts, we're finding tumors, we're finding masses and calcifications on 90% of those that we test. The thyroids are being attacked, and I believe mainly because of the water that we're drinking, the stress that we have in our lives, and also a contributing factor, which is a big contributing factor, is Chernobyl and Fukushima radiation poisoning. That's also showing up in our foodstuffs, in our waters. So we have to take these additional supplements of iodine to help support the thyroid in its main function is to regulate metabolism. And some of the other supplements you mentioned, besides iodine, I have to put at the top magnesium chloride. If you were just taking like 6 to 8 grams, 4 to 6 grams of magnesium chloride, it'd probably eliminate all pharmaceuticals you're taking. Magnesium chloride is the best kept secret for good health in the world. Try to get it at your health food store. It's not on the shelf. Mm-hmm. You might find citrate or sulfate or oxide, but you will not find magnesium chloride. Mm-hmm. Magnesium chloride is an alkalizer and a temperature regulator. When you start taking megadoses of magnesium chloride, your joints feel better, your muscles feel better, you circulate better, you have more energy. This simple mineral compound, magnesium chloride, is essential, and I use it in most of my products. Things like L-arginine, L-ornithine, to potentiate nitric oxide, to break down sclerotic plaque in the arteries. We measure this stuff. We check people's carotid arteries. We check their jugular veins. We check the portal, the aorta, the portal veins, the femur arteries and veins. We check them because people have blockages in them, and they wonder why they don't feel good. Mm-hmm. Strokes can be 100% prevented if people will just do an ultrasound of their vascular system once a year. Mm-hmm. It is so simple and it's so inexpensive. But it's not recommended by our doctors.
Well, I do it all the time. Because I've been interviewing many doctors, cardiologists, and even before interviewing, I did research. And I know that the cholesterol is really not going to kill you. It's the hardening of the arteries that are going to kill you. So if you go and you check yourself and make sure you don't have blockage, like most of the doctors say, if you don't have it in your arteries, 99% out of 100, you don't have it in your brain either. So it's very important, and I try to tell people to check your arteries, like you just said. A lot of people hear about cholesterol, but your body needs cholesterol. Your body needs cholesterol to build new cells and a number of different things, which people don't realize. I talk about on other shows when years ago, the cholesterol I think was 260, and then it went down to 240. Then it went down to 220 because they weren't selling enough statins. Then it went down now to 200. Now I heard it's going to go down even lower than 200. I mean, to me, that's crazy.
Are you familiar with the Framingham study?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the Framingham study, for those who aren't familiar, is the longest running study on cholesterol. And they find that people that have cholesterol less than 200 have more strokes and heart attacks than people that have cholesterol over 400. So cholesterol, you have to understand, is not the villain here. Cholesterol is an agent the body produces to solidify acids that are causing vascular stiffness, that are causing, the breakdown of cells, the epithelial cells, that are causing damage, to the basement membrane of our veins and of our arteries. You see, cholesterol is saving lives. What's taking lives and causing heart attack and stroke are the acidic waste products of what we eat, what we drink, and what we think that are not properly being eliminated. So, if you're in an alkaline state, you will naturally have, cholesterol's lower than 200. But if you're eating an acidic diet and you have low cholesterol, you're at risk for a heart attack or stroke. And if your cholesterol is high, the only way you can lower it, because if you lower it with a drug, such as a statin drug, you're actually setting yourself up for a heart attack or stroke. You don't want to lower cholesterol. You want to lower the acidic acids or waste products that are being ingested or not properly eliminated. And when you do that, then cholesterol comes down normally. And we've shown this on hypercholesterolemia that's been genetic. In a family that we've been studying now for close to 50 years, a family that's being studied at the University of Utah School of Medicine, they've been followed. And we have had the opportunity to work with several of those family members while the mother and the father, not the mother, but the father and some of the brothers or the siblings have died because of high cholesterol, which means nothing more than high acidity. Lower the acidity, lower the cholesterol. Increase acidity, increase cholesterol. If you go on to a no-fat diet, then you compromise the membranes of the cells. So it's not about fat. Fat is good because it's necessary to build the bilipid membranes. So you don't want to go on a fat-free diet. You want to go on a low or no acid diet. You want to approach a more alkaline lifestyle and diet, which happens, if I can show it, which is actually the whole protocol is disclosed in Chapter 11, and all the foods and recipes and everything is in this book, The pH Miracle. Right. It's a wonderful book because it's a handbook for health. Right. It's a handbook for self-care. It's a handbook that deals with every symptomology, regardless of what it is. We'd like to think that we're all special, that our particular disease condition is something special, but it's not special. All it is a level of acidosis that the body's trying to deal with. Once we understand that, this environmental approach, we change the context through a lifestyle and dietary approach, a self-care approach. We start taking control of our life rather than turning it over to people that don't understand the basic physiologies and functionalities of the body. This is when you're going to start getting well. You have to take back your health. You have to, or we have to take back control of what we do with our bodies. It is our life. It is our health. It should be our choice. And we have to take this back. And I have to tell you, there's only one healthcare program in the world now that covers everything that I just got through speaking about. Covers IVs, natural, like you were talking about, vitamin C, that covers massage therapy, that covers colon hydrotherapy, that covers acupuncture, that covers the vitamins and minerals, that covers the stay in a hospital or a stay at a health retreat resort like mine here in Valley Center. There's only one health care. And guess who's controlling this?
Who's that?
the Native Indians, the Native Americans.
Mm-hmm.
It's their health plan. It's called ONA Healthcare, ONA healthcare.com. It is the only plan that covers traditional and conventional medicine and literally allows you, as the patient, to choose your own path of care, to choose your own doctor. It's affordable, and I'm excited to be able to share it with the world.
Wow, that's amazing. So anyone from anywhere could get this insurance?
Anywhere here in the United States. It's a world plan. It covers you anywhere. The plan goes with you in any hospital, in any emergency, any type of doctor. It covers anywhere in the world.
That's amazing. That's the first I've ever heard of that, and I'm sure our viewers never heard of that either.
Yeah, it's onahealthcare.com. You know, and you can go to the website. You can fill out an application. All you have to do is put a referring email address, which is mine. It's phmiracleliving@aol.com. Just let them know that you heard about this, and you know, here on your program, because we're just new. This plan is new, but it's very, very exciting for people when they hear about it, and we're seeing tremendous enrollments.
Oh, that sounds too good to be true.
Now, the beauty of this is it comes under the Native Indian law, and also it qualifies under Obamacare. So there's no tax penalty by going to a alternative health care plan and receiving coverage, you know, because you want to choose a naturopathic doctor. You want to choose a chiropractor. You want to choose an acupuncture treatment. You want hyperbaric oxygen treatments. You want nutritional IVs. Whatever the treatment is, that is either conventional or traditional, are covered under the plan.
Okay, now can you, to buy your book, I'm sure it's in all the bookstores, and it's on Amazon also, right?
It's on Amazon.com. It's on BarnesandNoble.com. It's on our website, which is foreveryoung.com with a PH, Forever Young, PHOREVERYOUNG.com. It's on the phmiracle.com website. And yes, it's in every bookstore across the world in 29 different countries, in 191 countries in 29 different languages.
Okay, and if someone wanted to get in contact with you, how would they do that?
The best way to get in contact with our group is by either going to our website at phmiracle.com or at foreveryoung.com, or you can write me personally at phmiracleliving at AOL.com or at forever at phmiraclelife at Gmail. So phmiraclelife at gmail.com. You can write me there, or you know, just give us a call at 760-751-8321.
Okay, that sounds good. And the ranch again is where?
The ranch is in Valley Center, California. We have a place there. We also have a clinic up in Los Angeles, and then, you know, we also have in the beautiful Minor Alps in Como, Italy. We have a resort there. In fact, you know, I'm going to be going back there here just shortly to our Thai sauna resort, where we have people from all over the world come to our European facility in Como, Italy.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the Health Show, and hopefully down the road, maybe we can do this sometime again.
Well, thank you, and thank you for this opportunity to share the truth. And, you know, I believe strongly that we have the power to control and our quality of life and our quantity of life. It's within all of us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So there you have it, Dr. Young. Go to his website, give him a call. If you have any disease, Go to his website. There's so much you can learn. Buy his book. Buy his book. Live off his book. You know, I'm trying the best I could to live off his book and try and keep my body alkaline. And, you know, I'm not doing such a bad job. I'm in my 70s, and I'm very healthy. So I want to thank you for joining us on the Health Show, and we look forward to seeing you again the next time.